Welcome back to the Kyle Olson Show. You may have heard this story about Community United Methodist Church in Pasadena, Maryland. An employee answered the door without a mask, and there, unannounced, was a representative from the health department. The church was then cited and informed the inspector would return, and if the agent from the Anne Arundel County Health Department decided it was not in full compliance, the church would be deemed a, quote, unsafe facility and closed until the state of emergency has been terminated, which will probably be never. Joining me now to discuss this is Lori Roman, president of the American Constitutional Rights Union. So, Lori, where does this case stand right now?
Hi, Kyle. Well, as you can imagine, first it starts with a very shocked pastor. Dr. Jackman at the church is a medical doctor. So imagine his surprise when the Anne Arundel County Health Department officials cited him for not having a mask on during the day in his own office alone, not even during a church service. So the interesting thing is that the Maryland government has been encouraging people to snitch on their neighbors and on their churches. Mm-hmm. Anyone isn't in perfect compliance with the many, many things that the government wants you to do. And so on a turn of events, a parishioner at that church instead snitched on the government to the American Constitutional Rights Union. So they called us to tell about the crisis tyrants, the overzealous government bureaucrats threatening churches and pastors. And so we jumped in. And interestingly enough, it was the exact same week that Republican Governor Larry Hogan in Maryland, he released prisoners citing COVID. He released prisoners the same week he unleashed health department officials to go to churches and threaten pastors with closure, jail time, and $5,000 fines. I can't even believe this is America. So what the pastor has done is he's working with us. We're doing a lot of media. I just call it naming and shaming. You have to call out these bureaucrats to make them stop. You have to stand up for yourselves. And it's really time in America for people to stand up and say, as we do at American Constitutional Rights Union, live free. You're free people. Live free. Stand up to the crisis tyrants.
That's a good way to describe them. So let's take a sort of a broader look at this. How is this case indicative of what is happening around the country when it comes to how these progressive governors, Republican or Democrat, or these crisis tyrants, as you say, how are they using the coronavirus to grab power?
I think our organization was the first one early on in March to start deeming some of these governors crisis tyrants. We were putting out press releases every week naming a crisis tyrant of the week, from Governor Whitmer in Michigan, who has pretty much put Michigan on a lockdown that's just destroying businesses and lives, to Governor Cuomo in New York. As you see people finally rising up to defend the bar owner who dared to open his own business and was arrested for opening his own business. And now you have Los Angeles. Right now, it virtually has every single person in Los Angeles under house arrest. They actually came out with an order today saying they didn't want people to walk unnecessarily. And so this is tyranny. And I am shocked at how many Americans think it's okay. It's not okay. There isn't any virus that strips away our constitutional rights. We have the freedom to assemble. We have the freedom to speech. And this is not to be tolerated in the United States of America. China, maybe, not here. It's time to really fight back. As you see, the crisis tyrants, they seem to do whatever they want. The elite get to do what they want. Liberal protesters get to do what they want. It's law-abiding citizens trying to make a living and go about their daily lives that are being harassed, threatened, arrested, and put under house arrest.
You know, a phrase that we haven't heard a lot is civil disobedience. But when you say people should stand up, get specific about that. How should they stand up?
Well, just this week, we had the anniversary of Rosa Parks refusing to give up her seat on the bus and move to the back of the bus. Let us use her as an example of nonviolent civil disobedience. It's powerful. Martin Luther King, Gandhi. I've been a student of this since I was very young. I was fascinated with passive resistance, nonviolent civil resistance. We have examples. We are the nonviolent folks. The other side are the violent people, but there is so much power in civil disobedience. The shop owners that are opening in defiance of law, they're risking arrest, they are, but people are rallying around them. The problem is this: until we get enough people doing it, those people are very vulnerable who do it. But there is strength in numbers, and it's time for us to get the numbers on our side and fight back. If they can do this over a virus with a virtually 99.9% recovery rate, what else can they do to you? And the answer is just about anything they want.
So, what is the remedy for a church or any private institution in a situation like this?
Well, Community United Methodist Church so far has chosen to use publicity and going out and garnering the support of other pastors and other residents in Maryland. They have not chosen legal action at this point. Had they been shut down, or if they are shut down by the bureaucrats who continue to visit them and see if they're in compliance, then that's always on the table. There is the possibility of litigation. But I would love to hear from anyone listening to your broadcast at American Constitutional Rights Union, theacru.org. Get in touch with us so that we can help you. If you have had something like this happen to your church or your business, if you've had some outrageous action taken against you by crisis tyrants, we would love to help, and we would love to help you develop a plan to fight back.
So how do you help them?
Well, it can vary. We can come alongside them with publicity. We can come alongside them and create coalitions and people to come around them, which is one of the things we're doing with Community United Methodist Church. It can go, in certain cases, all the way to help with litigation. We do have lawyers on our team who can assist with that and give direction. We may not end up being the lawyers that represent, but we can certainly help you find the lawyers that represent if we are not. But we can help in a number of ways. One of the most powerful and the quickest is to get attention to the bad behavior of the bureaucrats. The folks who are elected should be somewhat susceptible to public opinion, although these days, with vote fraud being as rampant as it is, perhaps not as susceptible as we thought.
You know, it's so interesting to me because if you go back to 2016, 2017, you know, what we heard from the Democrats, from liberals, from the media is that Trump is a dictator. He's going to, if he's elected, he's going to grab power. To me, there was no better time for him to grab power than earlier this year when the virus broke out. And I think a lot of people were scared, and I think they would have tolerated the federal government grabbing power. But interestingly, Donald Trump didn't do that. And in fact, he wanted to assist, but he recognized that the virus was in a different situation in different states. You know, South Dakota is different than Michigan, is different than Florida, et cetera. And he wanted to help the states, but ultimately the states were in charge. And so then the very people who were saying he was going to be a dictator, suddenly they were acting like, in my opinion, were acting like the dictators, whether it's Cuomo, whether it's Whitmer, whether it is Newsom, or, there's several others, the Pritzker in Illinois, et cetera. What is your take on how Trump has handled this versus these governors?
I would say President Trump has shown great leadership. He issued guidance and had the federal government issued guidance, but did not force anything on the states, which is, if you are a constitutionalist, as we of course are at American Constitutional Rights Union, is everything you would want from your president in the time of crisis. There was leadership, but there was not authoritarianism. Mm-hmm. And that's what you want. I'm old enough to remember a day when the Democrats were anti-war and supposedly pro-freedom. I see no signs of that now. President Trump didn't lead us into war, and he has promoted freedom every minute that he's been in office, while everyone seems to have been against him. But nothing has made it clear who's on the side of freedom more than this virus. The totalitarian nature of some people has been obvious, and their willingness to grab power and take advantage of a situation. And your listeners could go to the World Economic Forum for another kind of worldwide take on this. The World Economic Forum, if you read between the lines on their website, and you don't have to read too much in between the lines, they are using this virus, they call it the Great Global Reset. Mm-hmm. And by that, they mean a reset of taking away people's rights, freedom, abolishing capitalism. They call it reinventing capitalism, but I call it abolishing capitalism, right, as we know it. And to me, I would say it's socialism/communism that is on the march with COVID as the excuse. And if you think that, if anyone's listening and think, oh, that sounds like crazy conspiracy theory stuff, just go read their website. They're not really trying to hide it very hard.
No, that's right. And in fact, about 2 weeks ago, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau literally used the word reset. So they're not hiding it very well. But Lori Roman is president of the American Constitutional Rights Union. You can, if you need her organization's help, you can go to theacru.org. Lori, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Kyle.
This is the Kyle Olson Show. We'll be right back.